Like, are you actually absorbing like your environment?
Yeah,
I would say so. Yeah.
I think I'd say you absorb it at in a way that you would feel it around you. So it would be like feeling the sun on your back rather than looking at the sun, for example.
Right. Okay. But so
you're feeling.
It's in the context of what you need to do to race.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or are you talking about? Like for me, it sounds like you're talking about you find, like when you get that runner's high. It's like the riders. Like if I'm wondering if it's the same thing, or because it sounds to me like you're talking about a heightened place experience, right? Where you're really feeling where you are.
Yeah, there's definitely some emotional kind of purges that happen, and I think they only make sense when you've come from a place to get there. You couldn't walk out your door and suddenly be like, oh wow, I just feel amazing today. But if you've been really, you've had a rough time, and chemically you might be, food has a huge effect on the brain, and I think, you get there in order. You have the down, and then you have the up again, and the fact that you never thought that you would feel so good after you felt so bad actually makes the up feel so good. You think, I've put 500 miles down, and now I feel amazing, and that gives you a tremendous sense of freedom, where you think, well, I've got this range, and in some circumstances that range that you've got connects you to the landscape a little bit more, in such as over a short period of time you've traversed the contours and actually made sense of your surroundings in terms of the topology and the geography of it, because you've seen it, you've travelled through it, and that to me is more experiencing it spatially is more interesting than just experiencing a two-dimensional view out from a platform.
Right.
So I wouldn't want to sort of drive somewhere and then sort of plonk myself in the landscape and then look at it. But to travel into and out of and through the landscape all the time it being there, you don't need to look and stop at the landscape.
You feel it.
You're in it, yeah. And your situation in it is with the context of it, where you've come from, and the logistics of your food supplies, the routes out, and you're constantly aware of where the escape routes are, and you feel kind of more connected to the landscape, I think.
I can relate to that. That makes a lot of sense to me.
So that conversation happened before Mike's record run on his last Tour Divide, the night before, staying with some friends in Banff. So, because normal people don't come out to race 500 miles, so I figured you might as well get some inspiration out of it, and there's a few more, and there's really nobody wiser, and so we'll get there as we go. I was also very proud of my little promotional video. I don't know if you saw it, but you get to watch it again. Still self-supported. There's still no teams. There's still no drafting. There's still no outside assistance. It's not available to anybody else. And as multiple racers over the years have learned, the stores are not 24/7. So there's like no nighttime store that's open between Huntsville, Texas, and the end until you get to College Station. The very first year of the race, I got super sick, so I was out. So I drove out Sunday morning to meet the leaders coming in, and I couldn't find them. I drove back and forth, and I'm like, man, there are dots here. And I'm like, I can't find them, and they were at the convenience store, like 3 miles from the end. I was like, what are y'all doing? And they're like, we haven't seen food in like 200 miles. Like nothing was open. So plan accordingly. So plan as always. Pre-race meeting, 4:30 in the morning, so everybody gets a lecture. Puts everybody on the same page, same rules, same kind of ethical expectations. Track leaders holds the clock, so 5 a.m., don't be late. We always have 1 or 2, like you're on your own, because the clock starts at 5 and it's held in North Carolina at Matthew Lee's house, so we're rolling at 5 o'clock. As a group.
Which parking lot? Which are you starting at?
Well, it'll be well marked, but we're starting right here at the Stella Hotel. So most of the racers will stay here. There's a promo code that was on the registration site, and they know that you'll be here. They may ask us to put our cars somewhere. I'll know that a few days before or whatever, but basically they know we're here and they know what we're doing, and so that's all good, and they're massive supporters. So that's all good times. The night before, dinner session here. So everybody can, whatever, strategize and do whatever they need to do. Time to be announced, but probably around 6 p.m. It'll still be dark early. I mean, there's a lot of darkness this year because this race has moved up to March. So we'll talk about some of that, but it's going to be dark. It's a dark race, so lots of good lights. And then everything else that I'm going to talk about is totally a draft. And there's kind of a little committee of sorts that kind of vote on what we're doing with the race. And massive decision that was made basically today before I put all this together. And so it just didn't have time to make it in. We'll get to that as we go. But we're doing the top loop backwards. So we can't do the whole thing backwards, which I've always wanted to change it every year. Because if you do the whole thing backwards, it puts all the racers coming back across Highway 30 on the bridges by themselves, and that's just silly. So, but we can do the top loop. And so I'll explain that as we go. Everything else is a draft, so I'll be out on the route the next couple of weekends, which is theoretically what it takes to get it all done. The bridges up there are, as you know, they're built by a carpenter back in the 1600s. They get washed away, there's construction all the time, so I just have to go verify that the roads still exist. And many of them do not. So I have to go work that out. So everything on here is a draft, but the premise is good. So first 20 miles, under escort. We go slow, and by slow I mean power low, but in a group behind a truck, totally calm conditions. The group tends to move pretty fast. Aim for 10 or 12 miles an hour. It always ends up being 14 or 15, but it's a group, and I've never really heard anybody complain. Nobody really falls off the back. But we do have radios, and there's cops everywhere, and so we will keep everybody together, and if they jump off the front, we'll hold everybody back. Because I promise that no one will win this in the lead out. And the smarter people try to get into the middle, but everybody does their turn up at the front. The dubstep music in the back of the truck will be there again because it's 20 miles, so it's a rolling party. So that's basically the deal. Drafting, of course, during this time is totally legal. It becomes illegal as soon as you hit dirt on Grimes County 190. So the right-hand turn out into Grimes County, then it's game on for real. Last year, Shannon Paul Watt totally dropped the hammer right there and said, we're leaving, and we did that point to Palestine, to Highway 7 6 hours faster than the year before. And I'll put the time splits are here. They'll be here in case you're chasing those, which is fantastic. We'll talk about some goal setting at the end. I think he's going to hold it back a little more this year. I asked him to because it kind of was painful, but we did it. All right, so the race in its entirety, the bottom part pretty much stays the same. The top part, we're going backwards. So I'm going to present this the way we've always done it because that's the way I made the presentation. But when you get to Onalaska, you got to go the other way. And the GPX will be flipped. So if your Garmin is giving you directions, it'll be correct. You won't have to like listen to the U-turn for 300 miles. U-turn at the next. It'll be right.
You lost half your racers, bro.
No, I know. Yeah. All right. Mile 20 to 65 is the first time Sam Houston going into Richards. Leader, and that's the first resupply. If you need a resupply in Richards, it's there. It's a little bitty grocery store thing. The gas station on the corner is closed. It's not that, but if you turn right and go down, there's a little grocery store of sorts. Leaders traditionally hit Richards by 9 o'clock in the morning. So whatever that is, if you type that in your calculator, we left at 5, so 4 hours. It's like 16 point something miles an hour. So they like to go a little quick in the beginning. Second section, 65 to 100 is Richards to New Waverly. Again, it's more national forest. It's fun. Leaders hit New Waverly last year, which was record pace at 11:06 a.m. So the first 100 miles in 6 hours and 6 minutes. Again, I don't know, type that into something, but it was fast. It's fun, but it was a little much. But it's good times. 100 to 152 is where it really starts getting real. Now, this next year we'll be going the other way. So this won't be the 100 to 152, but I'll present it as such. This is the Groveton Road. So the leaders hit mile 152, which is in Groveton, north of where you guys tried to die in the tornado. The leaders hit it at 2:45, and it always tends to look like this. So it's
Unless it's raining.
horrible. Yeah. So if it's dry, it's sandy, like the beach.
Yeah.
If it's raining, it's muddy. You're really aiming for that like low-grade mist, and then it's hard packed, and you can move across it pretty quickly. This year being in March, probably no one will die from heat exhaustion, but if you ride across this during the summer, it's unbelievable. I hear horror music every time I turn onto this road. Now, the good news is this year we'll be coming the other way, so it's all downhill, except it's flat. But, I don't know. It'll feel like downhill.
How many miles about?
Isn't it like 7 or 8?
So for this year, that'll come in at mile like 3.
Like total miles.
Oh, the section
Yeah,
is like 4 miles probably.
It seems like 3 times.
Yeah, it seems like horribly longer because it's there's this like big ranch on one side, and it's this crazy straight. It's like Kansas. Like it doesn't turn. You can see all the way to the end, but you never.
Get there.
Yeah, like it just doesn't ever get closer. Like
There's a light you can see. You think, oh, if we get any closer. A couple hours later, the light's still there. You're not any closer.
yeah,
We were walking in like shin deep mud.
yeah. There's some pictures of that experience here shortly under the preparedness section. But yeah, it's the Groveton. I mean, it's the Groveton Road, and I hear the music.
That's the toughest part.
It is. It is probably definitely one of the crux of the whole thing. If you hit it the wrong time, if you hit it in a low grade mist and it's a foggy day, like it may be totally hard, and you'll be like, "What were they talking about?" Which is really one of the magic things about these long races is you'll have sections where people, just felt like they were all going to die, and then the next group of people goes through and they don't even know what you're talking about, just because the conditions were so different and it changes so quickly. But that's Groveton. The first real stop the leaders made last year was actually in Groveton at 152 for the resupply. There's stores, there's all kinds of stuff up there. Good restaurant if you want a sit-down meal. But
What time did y'all get there?
to Groveton at 2:45.
Yeah. We got there like 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah,
'Cause we
it's
walked-
all right.
had to
Everybody
walk
has
part of it.
different goals. Yeah, different goals, but yeah, 2:45. So that's Groveton. Next section was Groveton going into Palestine. So Palestine, the Whataburger at Palestine is straight up the halfway mark of the race. It's 24 hours. I don't know. You can kind of it kind of glows. There's like a halo around it as you come into Palestine. But that's definitely the halfway mark. Leaders get to the Whataburger around midnight. So Palestine's not flat as well. If you look at the elevation chart for the race course, you'll notice that there's like almost 16,000 feet of climbing. And most people wonder, well, how is that possible? The highest point on the race course is 615 feet above sea level. But there's 16,000 feet of climbing. That's all Palestine. And there's some crazy steep hills. I'm sure everybody rides them. They're like 17% grades coming off these train tracks. Great fun. They're very, very, very nice. It's dark, so it doesn't seem steep. But they're there. So that section, again, that section's National Forest, again, Davy Crockett. And I'm telling, up there it will be dark. Like even, there's supposed to be a moon this year, which is just means the werewolves will be out. I think it's still dark because the trees up there are, I mean, it's East Texas pine trees. So even with the moon, like it's dark. So really, really, really good lights will make this race much a better experience. It's usually terrible. It's just kind of miserable up there. Now last year, we were like 6 hours ahead of race, or 4 to 6 hours ahead of race pace, hitting Highway 7. And then the storms. We all got these massive, massive storms, turned all the roads into this horrible mud, but it wasn't like Rocky Mountain Tour Divide mud that sticks to everything. It's like vanilla pudding. It doesn't stick to anything. It doesn't stick to your bike, your tires, your shoes. So it just became this like slippery mess for about 20 miles. And you can go back and watch the dots, and everybody was walking for just miles and miles and miles because it just was completely not rideable. We didn't see any of the tornadoes up at the pointy end, but they were definitely went behind us and underneath us, and the tarp saved these guys, which is good. But the road conditions can change quick, so you kind of have to just take that into consideration when you're making tire choices and bike choices and whatever other kind of choices you're trying to make. Coming out of Palestine, the Palestine to Lovelady section is typically pretty amazing. It's where I normally see the sunrise. Super fast rolling, at least the first half, of course, then turning into deep, muddy, sandy horrificness. It's kind of like the Groveton Road all over again. And it's these farm fields that they put these farms on sand, and they just keep driving on them, so they just keep churning up more sand. Not bad enough. I always get people asking, well, should I be on a 3-inch tire? Like, no, it's not that bad, but you're going to walk those sections. But that's just the way it is. Last year, leaders came into Lovelady at 11 a.m. There's a little store, and there's a whole bunch of stuff there. By a whole bunch of stuff, it just means a town bigger than one store. I think there's 2 maybe that you'll see. And then, of course, it gets really pretty. Like, that picture never does it justice. There's these kind of big, open, rolling hills. It captures moisture. It's just always a really pretty section. Now, this year, we'll be going the other way, so you'll go up through Trinity and Lovelady first. So it'll probably be dark and miserable, and just all the adjectives that I used to describe the other half of the upper circle will apply to this one because it's pretty much the same. Churches, cemeteries, they're all there. Some have called this the East Texas Cemetery Tour, which is totally fine. You will go down like Old Cemetery Road and Vampire Way and like all of those kinds of things. They're all there. And we'll also, I know I put it on the Facebook page. I think I put it in here on the way into New Waverly, there's a bridge out that's going to force us on to 1375, the bridge going across Lake Conroe, which is the #1 Bigfoot sighting place in Texas. And if you Google that spot, like there's web pages about all of people's sightings, and they're like been investigated by like all these people. So, you know, as you go through there, that's just the way it is.
What mile will that be at this year?
It's like 95.
Oh, so we won't be delirious yet.
Yeah, 90, 95. You'll be going across there.
I just drove past there
Yeah,
like
that should be
2 hours ago coming from Houston.
See Bigfoot?
I did not see Bigfoot.
No.
But the shoulder looks good. It was clear of debris.
Yeah. So it'll work for this year. That bridge should be back for next year, and we'll use the original route. But pretty much all of the Sam Houston and Davy Crockett area, you're pretty sure that's where Bigfoot lives. It's just, you're pretty sure. So Love Lady coming back into Huntsville. Unfortunately, lots of pavement. A lot of it's really pretty. You get this whole bridge to yourself. It's just left over, and you get to ride across it, which is totally cool. And then you'll jump back onto the main circle. Leaders hit Huntsville last year at 619. There is a store in Huntsville, and you're like, well, Huntsville is a city. Like, it's a big city. But there is only one store that you're going to ride by, and it closes. So unless you're willing to go miles off route, you just plan ahead. Or make sure that when you leave Trinity, it would be on Alaska coming this next year, be way stocked up. If you're going to hit Huntsville late at night, that store closes, I think, at like 10. That surprised a lot of people the first year. It's a good store, but it does close. Huntsville back into University Drive you're back in Grimes County. Like, you're almost there, but don't think about it. I often tell people, don't think about anything except the moment that you are currently in. You could be 5 miles from the finish line and celebrating in your head, and then you get a flat tire or break a wheel or whatever. Like, you're not at the end, so don't think about that. That really eats people up. Just stay in the moment that you're in and just be happy pedaling your bike. But it is Grimes County. The Grimes County Road and Bridge, people, they like these, they like to pour rocks all over the road. Yeah, very nice. They're there. They've poured some more. I think they're probably going to pour more before we get there, like these big pebbly things. Feels really nice. It's great for your tires, and it's super helpful. Beat Ice now has a store that's like, I think it's 24/7. This is big gas station, so that's new. They do burritos and like full-fledged restaurant, and you're like 30 miles from the finish. But whatever, if you need a burrito, that's the place to get it. Highly recommended. The leaders made it to the intersection of University Drive at 2:30 a.m. last year. And then coming back into town, this is important, and we'll hit this again in our briefing before the race. So when we ride out of town under escort, we'll just go down University Drive. It's 5 o'clock in the morning, and we have police, so it's easy. For everybody coming back into town, you're on your own, and University Drive is a disaster. You try to do that on a Friday afternoon or Saturday afternoon, and you're just asking for trouble. So we'll take everybody off at Spring Loop and basically route everybody through the neighborhood, which is just follow the traffic signs and lights and act like traffic. And that'll bring you all the way back here pretty easily in almost the same amount of time with way less traffic. So we've tried to do it both ways, and we've tried to bring people down University. Like, it just doesn't, it's not a good thing, especially for the lead group that's like coming in delirious. For people coming in 3 and 4 days later who have slept, like, it's not that big of a deal. But for the other guys coming in, we're trying to keep them safe. So we'll bring them back through town. So that is essentially the route. Upper Loop, we'll go the other way, so you'll make like a figure 8 this year to just change things up a bit. GPX will be out in a couple of weeks, and planning can commence as normal. And then the time to beat is what, a 3 a.m. on day 2-ish. All right, some planning tips and tricks and advice and that kind of thing. So we'll go through a few things. Feel free to ask questions or trash talk people's gear and equipment and whatnot. But I did get some specific questions emailed to me that I'm going to hit up for a bunch of folks that aren't here. So first off is the bike. One of the best things I like about ultra distance racing is that nobody knows what they're doing. Right? Like, nobody. So you go to the Tour de France, like, everybody has the exact same thing. Like, every bike is exactly the same. And one says Specialized, and one says Trek, and one says Giant, and they're the same. Like, because somebody said they had to be. Everybody that races these things are totally different. And people come out on gravel grinders to mountain bikes. The guy who won, Jose, back the first year was on just a total mountain bike with suspension fork and big tires, and like he was mountain biking. Gravel grinders work fine, I think, for lighter racers. It's just not for me. I tried it one year. I'm not doing it again. It's crazy. So you'll see all kinds of things. Things like the salsa cutthroat, I think, are phenomenal and probably the best way to go. I think if you're planning on running things like a loft fork, I think it's probably phenomenal for this type of event. But it also kind of depends on your goals and the way you set your stuff up. If you're coming out to go fast, this is the kit of the racer who's, this is Shannon's. He's gotten second place 2 years in a row. You'll notice, like, there's not a sleeping bag. I don't know, there's like a bivvy thing, maybe, but I bet he doesn't bring that. So if you're coming out to go fast, leave that stuff at home and just decide for yourself now, like, plan now while you're good. I'm going to play a clip, one of my favorite things that Mike ever said ever. I'm going to play here in a second, but you got to plan now. So if you're coming out to go fast and you're going to do this in less than 48 hours, leave that stuff at home. Don't set yourself, if you have a sleeping bag and you're going to do less than 48 hours, what are you going to do with the sleeping bag? You're going to sleep in it. And then you're not going to do less than 48 hours. If you are going to sleep, and that is part of your race plan, then do it right. Don't skimp. If I've learned anything else. If you're going to lay down, you need your deep cycles. If you didn't listen to my talk, I gave a talk up in Denver at the Bikepacking Summit, and I kind of talked about sleep cycles and how racers should be choosing how long they lay down. I did like a quick survey in the group, and Neil was there, and Hefe was there, like all these, Lael was there, and like all these people, and I was like, how did you choose? So you got tired, you decided to lay down. How did you pick the number to set your alarm to wake up? And of course, it's all over the place. It's like, I just felt like that was right. There's a smarter way to do things, but it starts with a good equipment. So you know yourself, but like I know that if I'm going to plan on sleeping, I gotta have a sleeping bag and I gotta have a pad. Or I'm not gonna sleep. I'm just gonna lay on the ground and roll around for 2 hours, and that doesn't do me any good whatsoever. With an event where I'm trying to do under 48 hours, like, who cares? I can just trash myself and just keep going. If it starts getting longer than that, though, then I kind of have to change the strategy a bit. So pick your equipment accordingly. March 1st, it could be really cold up there. Really cold. Like, deceivingly cold and humid cold. It's like that cold that just, like, it's just, like, brutal. So make sure, arm warmers, leg warmers, stuff that can get wet. Because the likelihood of rain or moisture or thunderstorms that time of year is pretty high. So we'll just be in the middle of it, and we're going. We always, every year, it's like, well, but it's raining. Yes, we're going. Yes, it's raining, it's flooding, it's whatever it is, we're going. And we'll deal with the problems as they come. So it's a great time. So it's like, what does happen if the race leaders get to a point where between the time I've reconned the route and we get there that a bridge is gone? Well, you do whatever the leaders do is what we attempt to do. And as gentlemen and gentlewomen, we decide how to deal with those. And we run into it every year. every race, somewhere, something goes wrong. And so, if the leaders hit a point where they can't cross and they have to change the route, you'll get to that same spot and you'll just have to phone a friend, figure out what they did, and do that. Hopefully it won't happen. It hasn't happened the last 2 years. Hopefully it won't happen this year, but occasionally those things happen. So, if you need help dialing in equipment, I'm just a Facebook message away. I can certainly tell you what I will have, and I'll post on our Facebook page. There was a video of my bike setup on Route 66. I know this isn't Route 66, but my kit's identical. The only thing that changed is the bike has bigger tires. And I don't have a sleeping bag. Like, I leave all my sleep stuff. I won't take anything to sleep. But other than that, the way the bike is set up, all my equipment is exactly the same. So, yeah, if you saw that, that's what I'll be taking. But I'm also pretty good now at staying warm when it's cold, and I don't really need a lot of clothes. So you kind of have to plan on that. If you're going to stop a lot, you're going to need more clothes. If you can just keep going and muscle through, you can leave stuff at home. If you find yourself in the parking lot holding a jacket, wondering whether or not you should take said jacket, you should take it. Like, it's just a jacket, right? But we tend to get very wrapped up in these decisions and sometimes overthink things like a jacket's going to slow me down. It will make you more comfortable, so take it. Other than that, good shoes, good gloves. You'll see he's got 2 pairs of gloves in there, or maybe 3. That's wisdom. Gloves for when it's dry, gloves for when it's raining, gloves for when it's super cold. Because once you get your, like, I always try to keep 1 pair of gloves wet. So if I've ridden through the rain in 1 pair of gloves, I leave those as like my wet pair. And those are just the ones I'm miserable in. And then whenever it stops raining, I can put my dry gloves on. Because I don't want all my stuff wet. Water bottles. He's got 5. There are sections of the course where 5 is more than reasonable, especially when we were doing this in mid-April. Doing this March 1st, you can probably get by on 4, because I think it's going to be a lot colder. But 4 to 5 liters is definitely the recommendation. That section from Groveton to Palestine, so the upper, like, right-hand corner of the upper loop, that's 100 plus miles of nothing. There is a water spigot, if you know where to find it. There's actually 2, I think. There's one on the back of a church, and there's one in this random, like, pasture. But if you miss them or don't see them or don't, don't run out. So I've done it on 3 liters to 5 liters. I'll probably take 4 this year because I think it'll be colder. If it looks like it's going to be hot, I would take 5 for sure. Resupplies are infrequent, so plan ahead. There's a list on the webpage of all the towns that have resupplies. Just remember, these are little bitty towns. They aren't open at night. And when you go in, be nice. So we all signed up for this and we're all super excited to be there. The towns have, like, no idea, right? Like, they don't know who we are or what we do, especially if you go into a restaurant. Every year on the Tour Divide, right? I mean, there's just some troublemaker that goes in and they're tired and cold and grumpy, and then they're rude to the wait staff. And Matt Lee knows every single waitress all the way from Canada to Mexico, I can tell you, because they'll email them. And so we need to be nice, and we need to put forth that. I mean, we chose to be there, we chose to suffer, we chose to test ourselves. So tip the waitress as well. And if you decide to go into a restaurant, like, you're not a local, so you'll be there as long as it takes them to make your bacon and eggs and coffee and whatnot. But plan ahead. Preparedness. You got to be prepared for stuff out there. So, and you can't read my stuff up there, but I'll put a better presentation up on the website. So thunderstorms, rain, very real this time of year. It could snow. I mean, we got that big snowstorm on Easter like 5 years ago or 6 years ago. So you really, really need to be prepared for whatever the weather may throw at you. All the mechanicals, dogs. I honestly have never really had a problem with dogs on the route, but I hear horror stories. I don't know. Be nice to the dogs. I'm sure they just want to play.
Cows.
Maybe. Yeah, the cows.
Llama.
The llama made the presentation. He'll be up here in a minute. You never know. Anyway, Bigfoot. And then, of course, self-rescue is your responsibility. So this is not your typical Grand Fondo. If you have to bail, you're responsible for your way out. So phone a friend, phone your family, phone somebody. There's not a lot of resources up there. So,
Right out of Uber.
yeah, probably not. But I will tell you a funny story that didn't make this presentation. I raced the Vapor Trail up in Salida, Colorado this year, which wasn't the smartest idea. When I saw the entry list, I was the only person on the list not from Colorado or New Mexico, which should have been a sign. And the first pass I think is 11,000 feet, and then the second pass is like 13 something. And by that point, I couldn't see straight. And so then the next pass is back to 10.5, and it's a pass that I've ridden, I don't know, a lot. And it just got to the point where I couldn't do it. I laid down on the side of the road. I was like, oh, I'll get up there eventually. But like I was trashed. This guy in a all-wheel drive Subaru with a big U on the window, like pulled up right next to me. He's like, you all right? I'm like, you're an Uber. And anyway, hauled me to Monarch Pass, and down to Salida I went. Out of the race. It happens. Point is, though, be prepared for whatever is going to throw at you, however you have to do that.
Was that you make a plan when you're, in that context, sober and thinking straight and thinking rational, up ahead with you've got all the information. You're not in a situation where you're fatigued or skewed by any particular thing. You make that plan, and then you almost take away the escape routes from that plan, and you foolproof it for this person that is that weak-minded addict kind of person, and then you take things away from them. So you actually plan for that person and kind of control them by not. So it might be that you don't. There's a section which is hard, and you know it's hard, but you don't look or research any of the escape options within reason.
Right.
To not do that would be dangerous. But you make it so that the path of least resistance is the one that you want them to take.
Right.
So he's kind of talking about that duality of the racer, right? So we can all sit here and cut up, and the night before the race we can all trash talk, but then when it all goes bad and we're cold, tired, and hungry and out of food and whatever, racers do some pretty hokey things. So plan now, and you can kind of meditate on that now, and when you get to the race environment, whatever your goal was going in, whether it's to finish, whether it's a time, whether it's whatever, you're much more likely to do that going in. All right, so like I didn't make this up. Like I didn't make this slide. Like it's there on Google. He knows. So you should be prepared for Bigfoot. It says husband and wife observed massive upright animal in the Sam Houston National Forest on 1375. And this was on January 26th of 2016. Like it wasn't even that long ago. Yeah, like you can Google this and like it's pages of Bigfoot sightings in the Sam Houston National Forest, which is where we're going. If you didn't know, yeah. So, camping. All right, so what was that?
Oh, you better have your GoPro ready.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, GoPros, cameras need to be out.
Finish the race and then get rich.
Yes. Yeah, you always have to be ready because you never know. I was on the Tour Divide this last year and got pneumonia really bad. Had to take some time off in Montana. But I jumped back on the route because I had to get to Salida, which is where my ride was. So I was just riding the route to Salida and coming up the switchbacks out of, I don't even remember where it was the day before I got pneumonia. coming out of the switchbacks out of Whitefish, there's a grizzly bear sitting like Winnie the Pooh. I mean, he's just sitting there like at the corner of the switchback. So I have pictures. Well, anyway, we'll get to this. So climbing these switchbacks, I'm staring at a grizzly that's just kind of watching. And I know there were other racers because I started like 3 days behind the Grand Depart because I couldn't be there for the Grand Depart. And it just kind of got to the point where it was like, well, you got to get a selfie. I mean, you have to because no one would believe it. So I did. I got the selfie and continued to ride on. Well, the next racer that I rode into was Gary Johnson, the presidential candidate. And so he said, "Did you see that grizzly bear?" I'm like, "Yeah, totally. Like, did you get a selfie?" He's like, "No." I'm like, "I did." And yeah, showed him. So you gotta be ready. Have the cameras ready. You never know. So camping, you need to camp in legally designated areas of the national forest or private property where you're invited or otherwise allowed to be as sanctioned as part of the race. Some racers hit motels. Some racers lay on the side of the public roadway for however long that they need to be there. Point is, leave no trace, be respectful, and don't be where you're not supposed to be. Fair enough? Yeah.
So camping on the side of the road, like what's legal and what's not in terms of like camping on the side of the road?
Usually not, unless it's like a designated area.
Okay.
Yeah, it's hard.
Not really.
The national forest is
'Cause,
easier.
Like the county usually owns like you got the road and then the county owns like 15 or 20 feet.
Yeah,
So
and,
it's not technically that property owner's
right.
property.
What you'll run into in a lot of
I just didn't
these.
know what's the right, like what are y'all looking for? Because I'm new.
Yeah. So most of the churches are extremely welcoming, and they're around. Some of them will even have signs up because they know that we're coming through. Other than that, you're looking to national forest, camping areas, or just keep going.
There's lots of places on the national forest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've camped at the entrance of one. I bet. Had a nice lunch in one too one time.
Yeah. And what'll be nice about this year is you'll be coming back through the Davy Crockett. So you'll hit.
No, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sleeping and stuff.
So that'll be nice because the last 2 years, you're hitting the same Houston and the Davy Crockett like back to back, and then the whole upper loop is really basically national forest. It's just not designated. And then coming back through Grimes County is Grimes County and very, kind of agricultural, and you're kind of back to tons of private property. But that section's easy. Once you get closer to Huntsville and then closer to here, it gets harder because it's just all private everywhere. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you just keep going, and it'll be over soon. Yeah, there's llamas. I don't know what to tell you. In fact, and we ran into them like either the same day or.
A couple days before the race.
Yeah, it was before the race.
I've been
Just on a
back
training ride. You never know what you're going to run into.
I haven't seen them there lately.
These are at mile 90? No.
No, these are like
This is
almost in
189.
Navasota.
It's
Okay.
189. That's by where I live.
Yeah,
Piedmont.
and they're just running down the road. I don't know. I'm sure he
They
belongs.
just like to watch the race, man.
I'm sure he belongs somewhere. I'm not exactly sure.
Everyone belongs.
But it is important to talk about just the mental aspect of all this. So 50% drop rate, most likely, and that's true of almost every ultra distance event. And whether it's bike problems, mental problems, health problems, whatever, you've got this big gamut of things that potentially can happen. But you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're dropping just because you were unprepared or you didn't plan for the tired guy that you will become. So make those plans now. And the biggest one you'll hear over and over and over from most successful long distance cyclists is just to be in the moment that you're in. You know, if you watch, I'm sure most of you have seen the movie Ride the Divide, but you can actually watch like the first 10 minutes of that movie and pick out which racers are going to make it to Mexico and which ones aren't. And you can do it by the way they talk about things. The racers who talk about the future and who live in the future, you know, who say things like, well, you know, today I'll hit the 1,000-mile mark, or, you know, it'll feel good to get to whatever town. Like, they're ahead of where they are, and they're not in the moment. And mentally, that creates this big gap. And they have a very difficult time closing. If you look at the racers who are just totally happy where they are, whatever it is that they happen to be doing, they're in the moment, there is no gap, and that's just one less thing that they have to stress over, because they're happy now.
Did the guy with the quotes and long hair make it? I don't remember.
Who? Which one?
The guy with the long hair and the quotes. He always had a quote, a little mantra on his handlebar.
Oh, that was in Inspired to Ride.
Oh, that was the other one.
Yeah, and he actually died like 4 or 5 months ago.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't even remember exactly why. Neat guy. He had been, I mean, he was a, I think, 4 Tour Divide veteran. And then, of course, in Inspired to Ride, he was an attorney from Chicago or Boston or somewhere, I believe. But neat guy. But no, he did. Yeah, he did. He did finish the Trans Am for sure. He finished everything that he ever started.
Yeah, every time the show caught up with him, oh man, great.
Yeah. Yeah, he finished every race that he started. Neat guy. And then you have to set your goals, and you got to be realistic. So that's my son Will. His goal was to steal Mike Hall's popcorn. It was not an appropriate goal. It was funny, by the way. But anyway, so you have to set your own. For a lot of racers, it's just to finish. I always, I coach cyclists on the side, and I always get somebody that calls, 9 months before whatever, the Trans Am, for example, and their goal is to top 10 the Trans Am. And I'm like, okay, like, have you ever done an ultra distance event ever? Well, no. Okay, well, it's a little different than you saw in the movies when there was like 40 people. There's like 200. And some of them have raced the Tour de France, right? Like, so we'll have to take an interesting approach. It might not be a realistic goal. But only you can really know what those are. So set them appropriately, and then do it. Like, don't let anything change you from that. If the goal is to finish, finish. If the goal is to set a course record, throw the hammer down, and Shannon's going to chase you with his bacon. But do that. Just do it. It's only 500 miles. Like, it will be over. Like, I promise. So just make it happen. Don't destroy yourself in the beginning. I see so many people get wrapped up in the beginning, go out way too hard, way too fast, and they can't hold it. You'll rarely see people go off the front end of a race and hold that. The winner last year didn't get into first place until Groveton, and then held it. Because you just race your own race. When I go out, I know exactly what pace I can hold and for how long I can hold it, and I'm just going to do that and let everybody else get tired, is really the idea. You're not going to outpower the guy next to you in these events if you're going out to be competitive. You just kind of want to hold it and chill out and hope that you're not working as hard as the guy next to you, and at some point hope that he gets tired or runs out of food. And then when that happens, like, you leave. But not crazily, you just leave.
That we were talking about before there, about racing yourself, is, I guess it's what people mean, but you hear people say, oh, you're racing yourself a lot, and I think it's, I feel like you're kind of racing your own potential, or you're racing, you maybe take take yourself out of it a little bit. Like it's not. I don't feel like I'm racing myself, but I'm racing my idea of what I think is possible. So I'm trying to do two things. I'm trying to put down everything I've got on the course to make sure I come back and I think I just could not have done that
And
any
anything
quicker.
else.
That's success.
I couldn't say that part better. But it's a complicated sport with a whole lot of things to think about. Questions, comments, concerns about the course, about any of the resupplies, about any of it? All you guys are pretty easy, but it's good times. Don't be late. We'll all be here, right? Everybody staying here the night before? Make your reservations.
You said there's a promo code on the registration?
Yeah, when you register, there's a promo code for this hotel.
I've already registered, so.
I'll get it for you. I bet it's on the website.
It is.
Is it? If you just go on the website? Yeah.
It's on the-
Yeah, so you just go back on the website. It's there somewhere. So all that part's easy. And then look for the GPX like 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks from now.
You're gonna drive it first and then do the GPS?
Yeah. I mean, I have, all the GPX versions that we've put together,
Verify.
but yeah, I go up there in 500 miles in 4-wheel drive.
Are we still doing the, like, spot rental like we did last year?
Yes, same deal. If you haven't registered your spot, you need to get on that. If you're renting a spot from Track Leaders, you definitely need to get on that so that they set enough of them aside and I get them here on time. If you're using your own spot, you can really kind of do that up until the day before. It's not a big deal. They just enter the information in.
I got an old one, does that matter? I was reading something.
Yeah, so you can use an old one, which is fine. But the best is definitely the Gen 3 or the Trace with the unlimited subscription because you'll get every 5-minute updates. The old ones only do every 10-minute updates. If it happens to be a really competitive race, it's really annoying for the people at home, if you care. If not, you can just put it on there and let the world deal with it.
I'm not gonna be.
Yeah.
I have one.
I don't know if you remember, like,
I think I have a Gen 3. I have to double check.
I guess it was like 3 years ago, Tour Divide, first, second, and third place finished within like 15 minutes of each other. And they were literally like, nobody knew who won. Like everybody was watching Track Leaders and then it was like, well, what happened? Nobody knew because the updates of the spots were, just the resolution's not high enough. So then you're like going to everybody's Facebook page that you knew was down there at Antelope Wells trying to figure out who won on the sprint finish after a 2,700 mile bike race. But that's what happened. But yeah, I mean, if people are looking for you or anything, the every 5 minutes on Unlimited is definitely best. But if you don't care, it still works.
People are watching me and be followed every 10 minutes.
Yeah. It's totally fine.
All 2 people.
It's all good. The world will be watching. They do. Like they all get hooked. And they watch every racer. It's kind of funny because you kind of feel like if you're not at the front that nobody's paying attention.
No, you're right. I mean,
They're all paying attention. Anytime somebody drops or somebody pulls off or somebody misses a turn, no matter where they are in the lineup, like everybody. I mean, I'm racing and I'm getting text messages. I'm like, I don't know. I'm not back. I'm like, not my problem. Like, I'll deal with that later.
That's a good question. What percentage of the route estimated is there cell service?
60% maybe. That northern loop is almost non-existent. Pretty much nothing. But once you get back Huntsville, between Huntsville and here, it's pretty much total coverage. But that northern from, on Alaska and Trinity on up to Palestine, between there's like a tower in Trinity and there's like a tower in Palestine, I think. It's pretty bleak other than that. So it's always dark in the middle of the night anyway, like nobody wants to talk to you, so it's a good time for that, I guess. Yeah, but there's not a lot. Yeah. Lots of music. If you have your Apple Music playlists, make sure they're downloaded on your phone so that you're not trying to stream it. We've learned these lessons. You're like, no, there's. I only have 5 songs. All right. Well, good times. Other questions or whatever, just message me or message the Facebook page or whatever. But other than that, it should be a good race, and we'll have all kinds of good people. I think over 50. I think. I bet. It's my guess. Because there's lots of chatter, so that's definitely good. So cool.